The oldest girl hadn't cried in 19 days. 12 years old, holding her baby sister against her chest, watching her brother's lips turn blue. 4 other children pressed against her back, waiting for someone to stop. Waiting for someone to see them. The good people of Silver Creek walked faster when they passed, tipped their hats, kept moving. But on the 20th morning, a drifter with nothing left to lose climbed off his horse and asked a question nobody else had dared to ask. Stay with us until the very end. Drop a comment with your city so we can see how far Emma's story travels. Hit that like button. You won't want to miss what happens next. The wind had teeth that morning. Emma Grace Thornton felt it bite through the thin blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Felt it find every hole in her dead mother's coat. She pulled Lily closer, tucking the 3-year-old's face against her neck where the cold couldn't reach. Emma. Sarah's voice, small and scared. Emma, Toby's shaking again. I know. She knew. She'd been watching her brother's trembling grow worse for the past hour. Watched his 5-year-old body fight against cold that no child should have to fight. He hadn't spoken since Pa died in the mine collapse. 3 months of silence. 3 months of watching his eyes grow older while his voice stayed locked somewhere deep inside. Move closer to him, Emma said. Ruth, put your arms around Toby. Share your warmth. I'm cold too. Ruth's voice held no complaint, just fact. 7 years old, and already learning that cold was something you lived with, not something you escaped. I know, Ruthie. I know. 19 days. 19 days since the mine company men came and took their cabin. Said Pa owed money. Said the company owned everything now. Said 5 children weren't their problem. 19 days of sleeping in the alley behind the church. 19 days of watching the people of Silver Creek look away. Emma. Sarah again, 9 years old with worry lines that belonged on a woman 3 times her age. What if nobody comes today either? Someone will come. The lie tasted bitter. Emma had told it so many times now that the words came automatically worn smooth like river stones. Someone will come. Someone will help. Someone will see 5 children freezing and do something about it. But Silver Creek had already shown her what it thought of orphans. The mercantile owner had chased them away from his doorstep yesterday. The hotel manager had threatened to call the sheriff if they begged for scraps again. Even Reverend Brennan, who let them sleep in the church storage room when the temperature dropped below 0, had started talking about the orphan train, about sending them east, about separating them. Emma would die before she let that happen. Stay here, she said, transferring Lily to Sarah's arms. Keep everyone together. I'm going to try Martha's again. She said no yesterday. I know what she said. Emma stood her legs stiff from sitting on frozen ground. Her boots had holes in both soles, stuffed with newspaper that had gone soggy hours ago. Every step felt like walking on ice. Because she was walking on ice. The main street of Silver Creek stretched out before her false-fronted buildings wearing caps of snow smoke rising from chimneys that meant warmth for everyone except her family. She watched a woman in a fur-trimmed coat hurry past without looking. Watched a man tip his hat to his neighbor while stepping around the pile of blankets where 4 children huddled. Nobody saw them. Or everybody saw them and chose not to look. Martha's restaurant sat 3 buildings down, windows fogged with steam from the kitchen. Emma could smell bacon, could smell coffee, could smell bread baking, and her stomach cramped so hard she nearly doubled over. She pushed through the door. The warmth hit her like a physical force, making her eyes water, making her skin burn where the cold had numbed it. She stood there for a moment, just breathing heated air, feeling something almost like hope. Girl, I told you yesterday. Martha Caldwell's voice came from behind the counter, tired but not unkind. I can't feed 5 children for free. I run a business, not a charity. I'm not asking for free. Martha's eyebrows rose. You got money I don't know about. I can work. Emma stepped forward, aware of how she must look. Dirty, thin, desperate. I can wash dishes. I can scrub floors. I can do anything you need. Just give my brother and sisters something to eat. Please." The restaurant had gone quiet. Emma felt eyes on her from every table. Miners eating breakfast before their shift. Shopkeepers fueling up for the day. Respectable people who would go home to warm houses and full larders. "Child," Martha's voice softened. "You're 12 years old. I can work harder than any grown person in this town." "I don't doubt it." Martha wiped her hands on her apron, and Emma saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, maybe, or pity. Neither would fill hungry bellies. "But if I take you in, if I start feeding every orphan who wanders through my door—" "We're not every orphan. We're 5 children whose pa died in Mr. Fletcher's mine. We're 5 children who had a home 3 weeks ago." "Emma." "Our mother died giving birth to Lily." Emma heard her voice rising, but couldn't stop it. "Pa worked 12-hour shifts in that death trap because Mr. Fletcher promised good wages and a future. And when the timbers collapsed, when Pa and 17 other men were buried alive, did Mr. Fletcher take care of their families? Did he?" Silence. "He took our cabin, said Pa owed back rent, said the company store credit had to be paid." Emma's hands were shaking now, and not from cold. "We lost everything, and nobody in this town will even look at us." Martha stared at her for a long moment. Then she reached under the counter and pulled out a cloth-wrapped bundle. "Bread and bacon. Enough for today." She pushed it across the counter. "But, Emma, I can't do this every day. You understand, I have my own bills, my own survival." Emma grabbed the bundle, clutching it against her chest like treasure. "Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Caldwell." "Don't thank me." Martha's voice was rough. "Thank whatever God's still watching over you children. And Emma—" She hesitated. "I heard Henry Fletcher talking yesterday. He's been to see Judge Hawkins about your situation. Says he's got a solution for you and your siblings." Emma's blood went cold. "What kind of solution?" "I don't know. But Fletcher's never done anything out of kindness in his life. You watch yourself, girl. Watch out for those children." Emma was already moving toward the door. Fletcher. The name burned in her mind like a brand. The man who owned the mine that killed her father. The man who took their home. Now he had a solution for 5 orphan children. She knew exactly what that solution would be. The mine always needed workers. Small hands fit into tight spaces. Small bodies could crawl through tunnels that grown men couldn't reach. Fletcher had been using child labor for years, calling them apprentices, paying them in company scrip that could only be spent at the company store. Not her family. Never her family. Emma burst out of the restaurant and ran back toward the alley where she'd left her siblings. The cold didn't matter anymore. The holes in her boots didn't matter. Nothing mattered except getting to them, making sure they were still there. Still safe. She rounded the corner and stopped dead. A man stood over her children. Tall, broad-shouldered. A stranger with dust in his beard and a horse tied behind him. He was crouched down eye level with Sarah, and Emma's heart nearly stopped. She'd heard stories about men who took children. Men who sold them, or used them, or made them disappear. "Get away from them." She launched herself at him, bundle of food forgotten in the snow fists swinging at his back, his shoulders anywhere she could reach. "Get away. Leave them alone." The man caught her wrists gently but firmly, holding her back without hurting her. "Easy. Easy now." "Emma!" Sarah's voice cut through her panic. "Emma, stop! He was helping." Emma stilled, chest heaving, and really looked at the man for the first time. He was older than she'd first thought. Late 30s maybe. Gray-blue eyes that held something broken in their depths. Lines around his mouth that spoke of grief worn long and hard. His clothes were worn but clean, and his hands, the hands that held her wrists, were calloused and careful. "I wasn't hurting anyone." His voice was low, rough, like he hadn't used it in a while. "Your brother was turning blue. I gave him my coat." Emma looked past him and saw Toby wrapped in a heavy sheepskin coat 3 sizes too big but warm. Her brother's shaking had stopped. His lips weren't blue anymore. She felt the fight drain out of her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry you thought I was a threat." The man released her wrists, stepped back. "Good instincts. You should protect them. World's full of people who'd hurt children for no good reason." "Who are you?" He hesitated, and Emma saw something shift in his expression. Pain, maybe, or memory. "Name's Ethan McAllister. I was just passing through town." He looked at the children huddled together at the thin blankets and the hungry eyes, and the careful way they arranged themselves with the smallest ones in the middle. "How long have you all been out here?" 19 days. 19? He stopped, started again. "Where are your parents?" "Dead." The word hung in the frozen air. Ruth pressed closer to Sarah. Lily whimpered in Sarah's arms. Toby sat silent and still watching the stranger with eyes that had seen too much. "All of you." Ethan's voice had changed, rougher now. "All 5 of you are alone. We have each other." "That's not—" He ran a hand through his hair, dislodging snow. "That's not what I meant. This town. These people. Nobody's taken you in." Emma laughed, and the sound was harsh even to her own ears. "Mr. Fletcher from the mine wants to take us in, turn us into workers, split us up among different families who need cheap labor." She lifted her chin. "I'd rather freeze." Something flickered in Ethan's eyes. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. "Henry Fletcher owns the Silver Creek mine. You know him. Know of him. Knew men who worked for him." Ethan's jaw tightened. Not good men after Fletcher got done with them. He was quiet for a moment, looking at each child in turn. Emma watched him look, waited for the calculation she'd seen in other adults' eyes. 5 children was a lot of mouths to feed. 5 children was a burden. 5 children was— "You're all siblings?" he asked finally. "Same ma and pa?" "Yes." "And nobody in this town?" He gestured at the buildings surrounding them, at the people walking past without stopping. "Nobody's willing to keep you together. The Reverend says the orphan train's coming in spring. Says we'll be better off with families in the East." Emma's voice cracked despite herself. "They'd separate us. Put Lily with someone who wants a baby. Put Toby with someone who needs a quiet boy. Scatter us across the country like we're nothing, like we're not a family." Ruth had started to cry, silent tears streaming down her freckled cheeks. Sarah pulled her closer, whispering comfort that Emma couldn't hear. Ethan watched them, and something in his face broke open. "That bundle you dropped," he said quietly. "That food from the restaurant. Pick it up. Feed your family." Emma scrambled to grab the cloth-wrapped bread and bacon, now wet with snow but still edible. She passed it to Sarah, who immediately began dividing it among the younger ones. Toby's portion first, then Ruth's, then Lily's tiny pieces. "The 3 of us will eat after," Emma said when Sarah tried to give her a share. "Feed the little ones first." "No." Emma looked up. Ethan had pulled something from his saddlebag, beef jerky, a chunk of cheese hardtack that looked like it could break teeth but would fill stomachs. "All of you eat," he said. "Now, I can hear your stomachs from here." He crouched down again this time, holding the food out to Ruth, who looked to Emma for permission. Emma hesitated. She'd learned not to trust gifts, learned that everything came with a price. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want to watch 5 children eat food instead of watching them starve." His voice was flat. "That's all. Nobody gives something for nothing." "Then I'm nobody." He pressed the jerky into Ruth's hands. "Eat, little one. You look like the wind could blow you away." Ruth bit into the jerky, and her eyes went wide. "Emma, it's so good." "I know, Ruthie. Can I give some to Starlight?" Ethan's brow furrowed. "Who's Starlight?" "Her imaginary horse," Sarah said softly. She talks to him when she's scared. He's not imaginary. Ruth's chin jutted out stubbornly. He's just invisible. There's a difference. Something almost like a smile crossed Ethan's face. Almost. My daughter used to have an invisible friend, a rabbit named Captain. Used to have. Emma caught the past tense, caught the shadow that passed through his eyes. What happened to her? The question came out before she could stop it. Your daughter. Ethan went still. The smile died. She died, he said. 4 years ago. Fever took her and her mother both. The words fell into silence. Even Lily stopped fussing, as if sensing that something important had just been spoken. I'm sorry, Emma said, and meant it, because she knew that kind of loss, knew what it was to watch someone you loved disappear and know you couldn't follow them. So am I. Ethan straightened up, and Emma saw him rebuild the walls she'd accidentally broken through, saw him become a stranger again. Look, there's a boarding house at the end of the street. I've got enough money for a week's lodging, 1 room with a stove. You and your siblings could. We can't pay for lodging. I'm not asking you to pay. Emma stared at him. Why would you do that? Because I remember what it's like to have nothing. His voice was rough. Because 5 children shouldn't be sleeping in an alley in December. Because... He stopped, shook his head. Does it matter why there's a warm room? There's food. Take it or don't, but don't freeze to death out of pride. Emma. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Emma, Lily's lips are turning blue. Emma looked at her baby sister, at the tiny fingers curled against Sarah's chest, at the way Lily's breathing had gone shallow and slow. Pride couldn't keep a 3-year-old alive. 1 week, she said, and I'll work for it. Whatever you need done. You don't have to work for anything. Yes, I do. She met his eyes, and something passed between them, an understanding. I'm not charity. We're not charity. Pa taught us that a Thornton earns their keep. So if you're giving us a room, I'm earning it. Ethan studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Fair enough. Can you cook? Yes. Clean. Better than anyone. Handle horses. Emma hesitated. Ruth's better with animals. I'm better with numbers and organizing. Then you'll help me keep accounts while I look for work. He said it like it was settled. Like 5 children following him to a boarding house was the most natural thing in the world. Gather your things. Whatever you have. We're getting out of this cold. Ruth scrambled to collect the ragged blankets. Sarah stood carefully adjusting Lily against her shoulder. Toby stayed where he was, still wrapped in Ethan's massive coat, watching with eyes that gave nothing away. Emma approached him, knelt down so they were face to face. Toby, we're going somewhere warm. Can you walk? He nodded. Will you let this man help us? Her brother looked past her at Ethan, who stood waiting with the patience of someone who understood silence. Toby's gaze was measuring, assessing. Finally, he raised one small hand and pointed at Emma. You stay? Emma translated. He wants to know if you'll stay. I'm not going anywhere without you, Ethan said, addressing Toby directly. Any of you. I don't separate families. Toby stared at him for another long moment. Then he stood up and took Emma's hand. I'll take that as approval, Ethan muttered. They gathered what little they had. The blankets, a small satchel containing their mother's Bible, and their father's pocket watch. Ruth's collection of drawings on scrap paper, and followed Ethan down the street. People stared. Emma felt their eyes like physical weight. The Thornton orphans with a stranger. The Thornton orphans actually going somewhere instead of begging. Let them stare. The boarding house was run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson, sharp-faced and sharper-tongued, who looked at the 5 children with obvious distaste. I don't run a charity house, Mr. McAllister. I'm paying for a room, full rate. If my money's good enough for you, what I do with the room is my business. Those children are filthy. Then they'll use your washroom. Ethan's voice had gone cold. Unless there's a law in this town against dirty orphans taking baths. Mrs. Patterson's mouth thinned, but she took his money and handed over a key. The room was small, one bed, one stove, a washstand in the corner. But it was warm. Heat radiated from the cast-iron stove, filling the space with the kind of comfort Emma had almost forgotten existed. Ruth burst into tears. "Hey now!" Ethan looked alarmed. "What's wrong?" "It's warm," Ruth sobbed. "It's so warm, and I forgot what warm felt like, and now I'm crying because I'm stupid." "You're not stupid." Ethan's voice gentled in a way Emma hadn't expected. "You're a little girl who's been cold for too long. Crying's allowed." He was good with children. Emma watched him help Sarah settle Lily on the bed, watched him show Ruth how to adjust the stove damper, watched him gesture for Toby to come closer to the heat without pushing. He knew what he was doing. "You've done this before," she said. "Done what?" "Taken care of children." Ethan went still for a moment. Then, "I had a family once. Learned a few things before I lost them." Before he lost them. Before. The word carried so much weight. "I'm going to get food," he said abruptly. "Real food, not trail rations. Stay here. Keep the door locked. I'll be back in an hour." "Wait." He paused at the door. "Why are you doing this?" Emma asked. "Really? You don't know us. You don't owe us anything. You could have walked past like everyone else." Ethan stood there, one hand on the doorframe, not looking at her. 4 years ago, he said finally. "I buried my wife and daughter in Kansas. Same grave because I couldn't bear to separate them even in death." His voice was steady, but his hand had started to shake. "I've been running ever since, trying to outrun the memory of not being able to save them." He turned back, and Emma saw his eyes were wet. "I couldn't save them. But maybe—" He stopped. "Maybe I can stop running long enough to help someone else. Maybe that's what they'd want me to do." He left before Emma could respond. The room felt different with him gone. Smaller somehow. Quieter. "Emma." Sarah was watching her from the bed, Lily already asleep against her shoulder. "Is he going to keep us?" "I don't know. But he might." Emma looked at her siblings. At Ruth, who was drawing pictures in the condensation on the window. At Toby, who had curled up near the stove with his knees pulled to his chest. At Sarah and Lily, tangled together like they'd been since Lily was born. "I don't know," she said again. "But for right now, we're warm. For right now, we have food coming. That's more than we had this morning." "I like him," Ruth said without looking up from her drawing. "He didn't tell me Starlight isn't real." "Ruthie, everyone tells me Starlight isn't real. Even you sometimes. But that man just asked who he was." She pressed her finger against the glass, drawing a horse shape in the fog. "That means he understands about invisible things." Emma didn't know how to respond to that. An hour later, Ethan returned with a basket of food, bread, soup, apples, actual milk for Lily, and the news that Henry Fletcher had been asking about him at the saloon. Asking what? Who I am, why I'm in town, why I paid for a room for 5 orphaned children. Ethan set the basket on the washstand and began unpacking. Apparently nobody does anything in this town without Fletcher knowing about it. Emma's stomach tightened. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. I don't explain myself to mine owners or their lackeys." "You should be careful." She was surprised by the urgency in her own voice. "Fletcher is powerful here. He owns half the town, has the sheriff in his pocket, controls who works and who doesn't. If he decides he doesn't like you, then we'll deal with that when it comes." Ethan handed her a bowl of soup. "Eat first, worry after." The soup was hot. Real vegetables, real meat. Emma ate 3 spoonfuls before she realized she was crying. She turned away before anyone could see. Later that night, after the children had fallen asleep in various configurations around the small room, Ruth curled at the foot of the bed. Toby on a nest of blankets near the stove, Sarah and Lily sharing the pillow. Emma sat by the window and watched snowfall. Ethan sat across from her, cleaning a rifle she hadn't noticed he carried. "You should sleep," he said without looking up. "Can't. My mind won't stop." "What's it thinking about?" "Fletcher. The orphan train. What happens after your week is up?" She pulled her knees to her chest, a habit from childhood she'd never broken. "What happens to us?" "What do you want to happen?" The question surprised her. Nobody had asked what she wanted. Not since Pa died. Not since the world became about survival instead of wanting. "I want us to stay together," she said. "All 5 of us. I want a house with a door we can lock and a stove that's always warm. I want Ruth to be able to go to school instead of scrounging for food. I want Toby to talk again. I want Sarah to stop looking so scared all the time." Her voice cracked. "I want to be 12 instead of having to be a mother to 4 children." Ethan set down his rifle. "That's a lot of wanting." "I know. It's stupid." "It's not stupid. It's honest." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Emma, I'm not going to make you promises I can't keep. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or next week or next month. But I can tell you this." He met her eyes. "I'm not going to let Fletcher take you. I'm not going to let anyone separate you. And I'm going to figure out how to help, even if I don't know what that looks like yet." "Why do you care?" "Because I stopped caring for 4 years and it didn't help anything." His voice went rough. "Because I've been looking for a reason to stop running, and maybe 5 children in an alley is that reason. Because—" He stopped. "Because my daughter Rosie would have been your age now, and she would never forgive me if I walked past children who needed help." Emma felt something shift in her chest, something that might have been hope. "She sounds like a good person." "Rosie." She was. A ghost of a smile. "Brave and stubborn and kind. Like someone else I just met." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind outside and the soft breathing of sleeping children. "Get some sleep," Ethan said finally. "Tomorrow, we figure out what comes next. But tonight, you're safe. All of you. I'll keep watch." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." He picked up his rifle again. "Sleep, Emma. I've got this." For the first time in 19 days, Emma closed her eyes and believed that someone else would keep her family safe. For the first time in 19 days, she slept without nightmares. Outside, the snow kept falling, blanketing Silver Creek in white silence. And somewhere in the darkness, Henry Fletcher made plans of his own. Morning came with the smell of bacon. Emma woke disoriented, her body confused by warmth it hadn't felt in weeks. For a moment, she forgot where she was, forgot everything except the strange sensation of not being cold. Then she remembered. The stranger. The room. The promise he'd made in the darkness. She sat up slowly, careful not to wake Sarah beside her, and found Ethan at the small stove, frying bacon in a pan he must have borrowed from Mrs. Patterson. Ruth was already awake, sitting cross-legged near him, watching with the intensity of a hawk. "You flip it too soon," Ruth said. "Pa always said you gotta let it get crispy on one side before you turn it." "Your pa sounds like he knew what he was doing." "He did. He was the best at everything." Ruth's voice wobbled slightly. "Before the mine." Ethan didn't offer empty comfort. He just nodded and adjusted his technique. "Show me how crispy." Ruth leaned closer to the pan, studying the bacon with serious concentration. "Little more. Little more. Now." He flipped it. "Better," Ruth pronounced. "You're learning." Emma watched this exchange with something tight in her chest. Ruth hadn't talked this much to anyone outside the family since Pa died. Hadn't trusted anyone enough to correct them, to teach them to share pieces of their father. "Morning." Ethan had noticed her watching. "Coffee's ready if you want it." I don't drink coffee. Smart. Stunts your growth. He handed Ruth a plate with 2 strips of bacon. Take that to your sisters. Make sure Lily gets the smaller pieces. Ruth scrambled to obey, and Emma found herself alone with him in the small space between stove and window. You're good with her, she said. She's easy to be good with. Knows what she wants, says what she thinks. He poured himself coffee, the steam rising between them. The boy Toby. Has he always been quiet? No, he used to talk all the time. Used to sing songs Pa taught him, made up stories about dragons and knights. Emma's throat tightened. After the mine collapsed, after we saw them carry Pa's body out, he just stopped. Like someone turned off a lamp inside him. Trauma does that. Locks words away where they feel safe. You sound like you know something about it. I know something about a lot of things I wish I didn't. He set down his cup. The doctor in town, is he any good? Dr. Whitmore. He's kind. Helped Ma when Lily was born, didn't charge us full price because he knew Pa couldn't afford it. She paused. Why? Toby might need someone to talk to. Someone who understands why voices disappear and how to help them come back. We can't afford doctors. Let me worry about what we can afford. Emma opened her mouth to argue, but a knock at the door cut her off. Sharp, demanding, the knock of someone who expected to be answered. Ethan's hand moved to his hip where Emma hadn't realized he kept a pistol. He motioned for her to stay back, positioned himself between the door and the children, and called out, Who is it? Sheriff Dawson. Open up, McAllister. Emma's blood went cold. She looked at her siblings, saw Sarah pull Ruth and Lily closer, saw Toby shrink against the wall. They knew what sheriffs meant. Sheriffs had helped the mine company men take their home. Sheriffs had told them to move along when they tried to sleep in the livery. Ethan opened the door. Sheriff Dawson was a thick man running to fat with the red-veined nose of someone who spent too much time with whiskey. He looked past Ethan to the children huddled on the bed, and something like satisfaction crossed his face. So it's true. You've got the Thornton orphans. They're not prisoners. They're guests. Guests. Dawson laughed. That's a nice way of putting it. Mr. Fletcher wants to see you. Both of you. He nodded toward Emma. The girl comes too. Emma stays with her family. Mr. Fletcher insists. Mr. Fletcher can insist all he wants. I don't take orders from mine owners. Dawson's hand dropped to his gun belt. Maybe you didn't hear me right. That wasn't a request. The room went still. Emma watched Ethan's shoulders shift, watched him calculate distance and angles and odds. She'd seen that look on Pa's face once, when a drunk miner had tried to pick a fight. The look of a man deciding whether violence was worth the cost. It's okay. Her own voice surprised her. I'll go. Emma. He's going to keep pushing until he gets what he wants. Might as well hear what he has to say. She looked at Sarah. Stay here. Keep the door locked. Don't open it for anyone except me or Mr. McAllister. But, promise me, Sarah. Sarah's lower lip trembled, but she nodded. I promise. Emma grabbed her coat, the one with holes that let the cold through, and followed Dawson out the door. Ethan came behind her close enough that she could hear his breathing steady and controlled. They walked through town in silence. People watched. Emma felt their eyes, heard their whispers. The Thornton girl with the stranger. The orphans causing trouble again. As if existing while poor and parentless was somehow an offense against decent society. Fletcher's office sat above the assay building up a flight of stairs that creaked under their weight. The door was mahogany polished to a shine that seemed obscene in a mining town covered in dust and ash. Dawson knocked twice, then pushed it open. Henry Fletcher sat behind a desk large enough to sleep on papers spread before him like a general's battle plans. He was thin, sharp-featured with eyes that reminded Emma of the rats that used to infest their root cellar. Quick, calculating, always looking for weakness. Miss Thornton? He smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. Please sit down. I'll stand. As you wish. Fletcher's gaze shifted to Ethan. Mr. McAllister, I understand you've taken an interest in our local orphan situation. I've taken an interest in keeping 5 children from freezing to death. Didn't realize that required your permission. Permission? No. I admire charitable impulses. Fletcher steepled his fingers. But I wonder if you understand the complexity of the situation. These children aren't simply homeless waifs. They're the offspring of a man who died owing significant debt to my company. Debt. Emma's voice came out harder than she intended. Pa worked 16-hour days in your mine. He was paid in scrip that could only be spent at your store where prices were double what they charged in town. Whatever debt you claim he owed was manufactured by your own system. Fletcher's expression didn't change. Such passion. Your father had the same fire. Unfortunately, passion doesn't pay bills. He pulled a ledger from his desk, opened it to a marked page. Jacob Thornton, deceased October 15, 1879. Outstanding balance of $47.36 in company store credit, plus $18 in back rent for company housing plus. That housing is gone. You took it. We reclaimed company property, as was our legal right. Fletcher closed the ledger. The point, Miss Thornton, is that your family owes the Silver Creek Mining Company $65.36, a debt which legally transfers to his surviving heirs. Emma felt the ground shift beneath her. We're children. You can't collect debt from children. Actually, I can. The territorial law is quite clear on the matter. Minor children can be placed in work arrangements to satisfy outstanding family obligations. Fletcher's smile widened. I've already spoken with Judge Hawkins. He's prepared to sign the papers today. What papers? Apprenticeship papers. Your siblings would be placed with families who have agreed to provide room and board in exchange for labor. Ruth and Sarah to the Hendricks farm, they need help with the younger children. Tobias to the mill, they're always looking for small hands. The baby to Mrs. Patterson, who's expressed interest in raising a daughter. And me. You, Miss Thornton, would remain with the company. We have clerical work suitable for a young woman of your obvious intelligence. He spread his hands. You see, everyone taken care of. Everyone contributing to society instead of begging in alleyways. The world had gone very quiet. Emma heard her own heartbeat, heard the tick of a clock somewhere in the room, heard Ethan's breathing change behind her faster now, the sound of anger being controlled. You want to separate us. Her voice didn't shake. She was proud of that. You want to split us up and work us until we're too tired to remember we're family. I want to provide for you. The alternative is the orphan train east, which would scatter you even farther. Fletcher leaned forward. This way, you stay in Silver Creek. You can see each other. You can... No. Miss Thornton. No. Louder now. I don't care about your papers or your judge or your legal rights. You don't get to tear my family apart because my father died in your death trap of a mine. Fletcher's eyes hardened. I would advise you to reconsider your tone. And I would advise you to go to hell. The words hung in the air. Emma saw Dawson's hand move toward his gun, saw Fletcher's face flush with anger, saw Ethan step forward, putting himself between her and the desk. The children aren't going anywhere. His voice was calm, deadly calm. Not to farms, not to mills, not to any arrangement you've cooked up to profit from their labor. Mr. McAllister, this is none of your concern. I'm making it my concern. These children are under my protection now. Anyone who tries to take them goes through me. Protection? Fletcher laughed. You're a drifter, a nobody. You have no legal standing, no resources, no. I have enough money to hire a lawyer in Cheyenne, a real lawyer, not one you've bought. Ethan's voice stayed level. I have enough witnesses to testify about the conditions in your mine, about the debt system you use to trap workers, about the children you've already pressed into service without proper apprenticeship papers. He took another step forward. And I have enough bullets for anyone who tries to lay a hand on those children. Silence. Fletcher's face had gone pale. His eyes darted to Dawson, who suddenly seemed very interested in the floor, You're making a mistake, Fletcher said finally. This town belongs to me. The law answers to me. If you think you can... I think you're a coward who preys on people too weak to fight back. Ethan cut him off. I think you've never met someone willing to stand up to you, and you don't know what to do now that you have. He turned toward the door, his hand finding Emma's shoulder. We're leaving. If anyone follows us, I'll consider it a threat and respond accordingly. They walked out. Emma's legs were shaking, but she kept moving. Down the stairs. Through the assay office. Out into the cold, bright morning where people stopped to stare. That was stupid, she said when they were half a block away. You just made an enemy of the most powerful man in Silver Creek. I've had worse enemies. He won't let this go. He'll find some way to... Ethan stopped walking, turned to face her. His eyes were fierce, burning with something that looked almost like hope. Emma, listen to me. I spent 4 years running from everything that hurt, from everything that mattered. I told myself I was surviving, but I was just dying slowly. He gripped her shoulders. Your father died in that mine. Your mother died giving you a sister. You've been carrying 4 children on shoulders that shouldn't have to carry anything heavier than school books. And you're still fighting. You're still standing. I don't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Fletcher makes his choices. Dawson makes his. The people who walk past you on the street make theirs. He released her shoulders. I'm making mine. I choose to stay. I choose to help. And if Henry Fletcher wants to take you from me, he's going to learn what it costs to threaten my family. My family. The words hit Emma like a physical blow. We're not your family. You could be. It came out rough, almost broken. If you wanted, if you'd let me try. Emma stared at him. This stranger who had stopped when everyone else kept walking. This broken man who saw 5 broken children and decided to stay. You don't know what you're offering. I know exactly what I'm offering. I'm offering to stop running. I'm offering 4 walls and a warm stove, and someone who'll fight for you when the world won't. His voice cracked. I'm offering to be a father again, even though the thought terrifies me more than anything Fletcher could do. Why us? Because you remind me of everything I lost, and everything I could still have if I'm brave enough to reach for it. They stood there in the middle of the street, snow beginning to fall around them, while Silver Creek watched and whispered and wondered. Emma thought about her siblings, about Ruth's drawings and Sarah's worried eyes and Toby's locked-away voice, about Lily's tiny fingers curling around her thumb, about what it would mean to have someone else shoulder the weight. Okay, she said. Okay. Okay, we'll try. But if you hurt them, if you leave them, if you break their hearts the way this town has broken mine, you'll make me regret it. I'll make you regret ever being born. Something that might have been a smile crossed Ethan's face. Fair enough. They walked back to the boarding house together, and Emma felt something she hadn't felt in months. Not hope exactly. Not yet. But something close to it. Mrs. Patterson was waiting at the front desk when they returned, her face pinched with disapproval. Mr. McAllister, a word. Can it wait? It cannot. She glanced at Emma with barely concealed distaste. Mr. Fletcher's man came by while you were out. He made it clear that continuing to house you and those children would be, shall we say, problematic for my establishment. Emma's stomach dropped. You're throwing us out. I'm protecting my business. Mr. Fletcher owns the mortgage on this building. If he decides to call it in, how much? Ethan's voice was flat. I beg your pardon. Your mortgage. How much do you owe Fletcher? Mrs. Patterson's mouth opened and closed. That's hardly. $300 for. Whatever it is, I'll match it. Pay off your debt completely. He pulled out a money clip that Emma hadn't known he carried. You take my money, you're free of Fletcher. You turn us out, you stay under his thumb forever. The boarding house owner stared at the bills in Ethan's hand. Emma saw calculation flicker across her face. Greed maybe, or just desperation? That's real money. Real as it gets. Where did a drifter get that kind of... My family had a ranch in Kansas, before. He didn't elaborate on the before. The land sold after my wife and daughter died. I've been carrying the money ever since, waiting for something worth spending it on. Mrs. Patterson reached for the bills, then hesitated. Fletcher won't like this. Fletcher doesn't have to like it. Take the money. Pay your debt. Then you owe him nothing, and what you do with your own property is your own business. She took the money. The room's yours through winter, she said, counting the bills with practiced fingers. But if there's trouble, if Fletcher sends his men, there won't be trouble you need to worry about. Mrs. Patterson sniffed, pocketed the money, and disappeared into her office. Emma waited until they were halfway up the stairs before asking, "How much money do you have?" "Enough." "Enough for what?" Ethan paused on the landing, his back to her. "Enough to buy a small ranch. Enough to set up a household. Enough to give 5 children a real home instead of a rented room." "You've been planning this." "I've been thinking about it, since yesterday morning when I saw your sister's lips turn blue." He turned to face her. "Emma, I wasn't looking for this. I wasn't looking for anything except the next town, the next excuse to keep moving. But then I saw you and I couldn't look away." "That's a lot of weight to put on a stranger." "You're not a stranger anymore." He climbed the rest of the stairs. "Now let's go tell your siblings that they're not being separated, that we've got a place to stay, that someone's fighting for them." They found the children exactly as Emma had left them, Sarah on the bed, with Lily Ruth by the window, Toby curled near the stove. 4 pairs of eyes turned toward the door when it opened. 4 faces showing varying degrees of fear and hope. "Emma!" Ruth launched herself across the room. "You were gone so long. We thought maybe Fletcher had..." "I'm fine. We're fine." Emma caught her sister, held her tight. "We're not going anywhere." "What happened?" Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. "What did Fletcher want?" Emma looked at Ethan. Ethan looked at the children. "He wanted to take you away from each other," Ethan said. "Put you in different homes, make you work to pay off a debt your father never really owed." Ruth's arms tightened around Emma. "But you stopped him." "I stopped him for now. He'll try again probably. Men like Fletcher don't give up easy." Ethan crouched down so he was eye level with Ruth. "But I made him a promise, and I'm making you the same one. Nobody separates this family, not while I'm breathing." "Why do you care?" Sarah's question came out sharp, suspicious. "You don't even know us." "I'm getting to know you." Ethan didn't look away from her challenge. "And what I know so far is that you're brave and scared and trying so hard to hold everything together. I know you've been more of a mother to your siblings than any 9-year-old should have to be. I know you don't trust easy, and I don't blame you for that." He paused. "I'm not asking you to trust me today. I'm asking you to let me try to earn it." Sarah stared at him for a long moment. Then she looked at Emma. "What do you think?" The weight of that question pressed down on Emma's shoulders. She was 12 years old, and her siblings looked to her for guidance, like she had answers she didn't possess. But she thought about last night. About sleeping without nightmares. About waking up warm. "I think he's telling the truth," she said finally. "I think he actually wants to help us." "Wanting isn't the same as doing." "No, but it's a start." Sarah considered this. Then slowly she nodded. "Okay, we'll try." Lily, who had been watching from the bed with her thumb in her mouth, suddenly held out her arms toward Ethan. "Up," she demanded. "Up, up." Emma watched something break open in Ethan's face. He lifted Lily with hands that trembled slightly, settling her against his shoulder like he'd done it 1,000 times before. "Hello there," he said softly. "You warm?" Lily patted his cheek with one small hand. "Nice warm." "Yeah." His voice had gone rough. "I'm warm." Ruth tugged on Emma's sleeve. Emma, look." Emma followed her sister's pointing finger to where Toby sat by the stove. He was watching Ethan hold Lily, just watching with those two old eyes in his too young face, but his hand was moving. Slowly, carefully, Toby raised his fingers and made a shape that Emma recognized. The sign Pa had taught them back when Toby was learning to talk, and sometimes got frustrated trying to find words. The sign for home. Emma felt tears burn her eyes. Toby, did you just... He made the sign again, then pointed at Ethan, at Lily, at Emma and Sarah and Ruth. Home, all of them, together. Smart boy. Ethan's voice was thick. Real smart boy. Toby didn't speak. Maybe wouldn't speak for a long time yet, but he'd communicated. He'd taken a step back toward the world of words and meaning, and he'd done it because a stranger had stopped running long enough to hold his baby sister. That night they ate dinner together around the small table Mrs. Patterson had grudgingly provided. The meal was simple bread cheese, the last of the bacon apples from the general store, but it felt like a feast. Ruth talked about Starlight, about how he'd been scared by the sheriff, but now he felt safe again. Sarah asked careful questions about Ethan's past testing boundaries, gathering information. Lily alternated between eating and climbing into anyone's lap who would hold her. Toby sat silent, but present, his eyes tracking every movement, every word. And Emma watched. She watched Ethan answer Sarah's questions honestly, even when the answers were painful. Watched him take Ruth's imaginary horse seriously. Watched him cut Lily's food into pieces, small enough for her to manage. Watched him include Toby in conversations, even knowing Toby wouldn't answer. He was trying. It was more than anyone else had done. After dinner, after the younger children had been put to bed in various corners of the small room, Emma found herself alone with Ethan again. "What happens tomorrow?" she asked. "Tomorrow I go to the telegraph office. Send a message to a lawyer I know in Cheyenne." He poured himself coffee. "We need to get ahead of whatever Fletcher's planning. File for legal guardianship before he can push through his apprenticeship papers." "Can you do that?" "Just file for guardianship of 5 children you've known for 2 days." "Probably not. The law likes to take its time with these things." He stared into his cup. "But I can make enough noise that Fletcher has to slow down. Buy us time to figure out something permanent." "Permanent?" Emma tasted the word. "What does permanent look like?" "A house, land, legal papers that say you belong with me and nobody can take you away." He looked up at her. "A family, Emma? A real one, if you'll have me." "What about after?" "After what?" "After you decide you don't want us anymore. After we're too much trouble, too expensive, too difficult." She heard the bitterness in her own voice. "After you realize that 5 children are a burden you didn't ask for." Ethan set down his cup, stood up, crossed to where she sat and crouched down in front of her. "I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to remember it on the days when you don't believe it's true." His eyes held hers. "You are not a burden. Your siblings are not burdens. You're children who deserve to be loved and protected and given a chance to grow up without carrying weights too heavy for your shoulders." That's easy to say. It's not easy at all. I spent 4 years believing I didn't deserve anything good because I couldn't save the people I loved. I spent 4 years punishing myself for being alive when they weren't. His voice dropped. "But I'm tired of running, Emma. I'm tired of being alone. And if there's any chance at all that I can build something real with you and your siblings, I'm going to take it. What if you fail? Then I'll fail trying, and that's still better than succeeding at nothing." Emma felt something crack inside her. Some wall she'd built to survive the last 19 days, the last 3 months, the last 3 years of watching her mother die slowly and her father work himself to exhaustion. She started to cry. Not the silent tears she'd learned to hide, but real crying. Loud and messy and unstoppable. Ethan didn't try to quiet her. He just opened his arms and let her fall into them. Let her sob against his chest while he held on and didn't let go. "I'm so tired," she choked out. "I'm so tired of being strong." "I know. I don't want to be a mother anymore. I want to be someone's daughter again." "I know. I'm scared that if I stop holding everything together, it'll all fall apart." "It won't." He stroked her hair the way Pa used to do, the way no one had done since Pa died. "Because I'm here now, and you don't have to carry it alone anymore." Emma cried until she had nothing left, until the tears dried up and all that remained was exhaustion and something that felt almost like peace. "Sorry," she whispered. "I got your shirt wet." "It'll dry." She pulled back, wiping her face with her sleeve. "You must think I'm pathetic." "I think you're the bravest person I've ever met." He said it simply, like stating a fact. "I think you've done things most adults couldn't do, and you're still standing. That's not pathetic, Emma. That's extraordinary." No one had ever called her extraordinary before. "Get some sleep," Ethan said, standing. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Fletcher won't sit idle, and neither can we." Emma nodded, too drained to argue. She made her way to the bed where Sarah had saved her a space, curled up beside her sister, and closed her eyes. The last thing she saw before sleep took her was Ethan settling into the chair by the door rifle across his lap, keeping watch. Like he'd promised. Like someone who intended to stay. The telegram came back 3 days later. Ethan read it twice, his face giving nothing away, then folded it carefully and tucked it into his coat pocket. Well, Emma had been watching him since he walked back from the telegraph office, reading his silence the way she'd learned to read everything since Pa died. "What did your lawyer say?" "He's coming. Should arrive by the end of the week." Ethan poured himself coffee, his movements slow and deliberate. He also said Fletcher's already been in contact with the territorial court, filed papers claiming the children as company assets to satisfy the debt. Assets. Sarah's voice cut across the room, sharp with disgust. "He's calling us assets, like we're cattle or mining equipment." "That's exactly what he's doing." Ethan turned to face them. "But my lawyer says it won't hold. There's precedent against treating children as debt collateral. We just need to get our guardianship papers filed before Fletcher can push his claim through." "And if we can't," Emma asked, "then we find another way." His jaw tightened. "I didn't survive 4 years of running just to lose this fight." Ruth looked up from the drawing she'd been working on, her face troubled. "Why does Mr. Fletcher hate us so much? We never did anything to him." "He doesn't hate you, sweetheart. He just doesn't see you as people." Ethan crouched down to her level. "Some folks look at children and see lives worth protecting. Fletcher looks at you and sees profit. That's not about hate. It's about something worse. It's about not caring at all. Pa said people like that end up alone." Ruth's voice was small. "He said meanness eats you from the inside until there's nothing left." "Your pa was a wise man." "He was. He really was." The knock at the door came without warning. Sharp, demanding, familiar. Emma's stomach clenched. She knew that knock. Ethan moved to the door, his hand resting near his pistol. "Who is it?" "Dr. Whitmore. I'm here to examine the children." Emma watched confusion cross Ethan's face. "We didn't send for a doctor." "No, but I sent for myself. Open the door, Mr. McAllister. I'm here to help, not harm." Ethan glanced at Emma, who nodded slowly. Dr. Whitmore had been kind to their family, had treated Ma with gentleness during her difficult pregnancy with Lily. The door opened to reveal a man in his 50s carrying a black medical bag, snow-dusting his gray hair. His eyes moved quickly across the room, taking in the children, their conditions, their positions. "Miss Emma?" He nodded to her. "You're looking better than the last time I saw you. Getting some food in you, I see." "Dr. Whitmore, why are you here?" "Because Fletcher asked Judge Hawkins to order a medical evaluation of all 5 children. He's claiming you're unfit to care for them without proper oversight." The doctor's expression was carefully neutral. "I volunteered to conduct the examination before he could bring in his own man." His own man would have said whatever Fletcher paid him to say. Ethan's voice was flat. Exactly. Whitmore set down his bag. I, on the other hand, intend to tell the truth, which is that these children, while clearly recovering from malnutrition and exposure, are being well cared for and show no signs of neglect or abuse. Emma felt something loosen in her chest. You're on our side. I'm on the side of 5 children who've been through hell and deserve a chance at something better. He pulled out a stethoscope. Now, who wants to go first? I promise to be gentle. Ruth raised her hand. Can you check if Starlight's heart is healthy too? He's been worried. Whitmore didn't miss a beat. Tell Starlight I'll examine him right after you. Does he prefer the stethoscope on his chest or his back? His back. He's shy. Understood. The examination took nearly an hour. Whitmore was thorough, checking each child, carefully asking questions in a way that put even Toby at ease. When he finished, he sat down at the table and began writing notes in precise, careful handwriting. My report will state that all 5 children are in good health given their recent circumstances. Minor issues from malnutrition, which are resolving with proper feeding. No signs of neglect under Mr. McAllister's care. No medical reason why they should be removed from his custody. That'll help with the guardianship hearing, Emma asked. It'll help. But Emma. Whitmore looked up from his notes. Fletcher isn't going to stop at one setback. He has resources you don't. Connections you can't match. If he wants those children badly enough, he'll find a way to get them. Then we'll find a way to stop him. Ethan's voice was steady. Every time. Whitmore studied him for a long moment. You really mean that, don't you? You'd fight for these children, even knowing what it might cost you. I've already paid the highest price a man can pay. I lost my wife and daughter to a fever I couldn't stop. I couldn't fight for them because there was nothing to fight except nature. Ethan met the doctor's eyes. This time, there's something to fight. Someone to stand against. And I intend to stand. The doctor nodded slowly, then rose to leave. At the door, he paused. Mr. McAllister, the widow Abigail Mercer came to see me yesterday. She's been telling people she wants to take in the Thornton girls, says she can provide a proper Christian home for them. Emma's blood went cold. She wants to separate us. She wants help around her house is what she wants. Her offer has nothing to do with Christian charity and everything to do with free labor. Whitmore's expression hardened. I told her the children were under your care, and I saw no medical reason for that to change. She wasn't pleased. Let me guess, she's friends with Fletcher. They attend the same church. Make of that what you will. He tipped his hat. Good luck, Mr. McAllister. Miss Emma, you're going to need it. After he left the room, felt smaller, heavier. Widow Mercer. Sarah's voice was tight with fear. She looked at me once when we were begging outside the mercantile. Looked at me like she was measuring me for a work dress. Nobody's taking you anywhere. Emma grabbed her sister's hands. You hear me, nobody. But if she and Fletcher are working together, then they'll have to get through me first. Ethan cut in. And I don't go down easy. The next few days passed in a haze of preparation and waiting. Ethan spent hours at the telegraph office communicating with his lawyer. Emma helped organize their documents, their stories, their evidence of Fletcher's wrongdoing. Sarah took over caring for the younger children, while Emma worked, finding a purpose that seemed to ease some of her constant worry. Ruth drew. She filled page after page with images that made Emma's heart ache. Their old cabin before the mine company took it. Pa's face rough and loving. Ma holding baby Lily. And new pictures too. Ethan leading his horse. The 5 of them sitting around the boarding house table. A house that didn't exist yet, with smoke rising from the chimney and flowers in the window boxes. What's that one? Emma asked, sitting beside her. Our home. The one we're going to have someday. How do you know we're going to have it? Ruth looked up at her with Pa's eyes in Ma's face. Because Ethan promised, And he keeps his promises. I can tell. How can you tell? Because he looks at us the way Pa used to look at Ma, like we're the most important thing in the whole world. Ruth went back to her drawing. People who look at you like that don't break promises. On the 5th day, the lawyer arrived. His name was Thomas Garrett, and he was not what Emma had expected. Young, maybe 30, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles and a suit that had seen better days. But his handshake was firm and his gaze was direct. "Mr. McAllister, these must be the Thornton children." He looked at each of them in turn. "I've read your file. Impressive family. Your father was a good man who got dealt a bad hand. Your mother was a fighter. You children have inherited the best of both." "Can you help us?" Emma asked. "That's why I'm here." He sat down at the table, pulling documents from his case. "I've been researching Fletcher's claims. The debt he says your father owed is largely fabricated. Company script systems have been challenged in territorial courts before, and they don't hold up well under scrutiny. So we don't really owe him anything. You owe him nothing, but proving that will take time, and time is what Fletcher's trying to steal." Garrett spread papers across the table. "He's got a hearing scheduled for next week. Wants Judge Hawkins to declare the children wards of the territory, which would put them under the court's control. From there, he can push through his apprenticeship papers." "How do we stop him?" "We file for guardianship first. Make Mr. McAllister the children's legal guardian before Fletcher can claim territorial authority." Garrett looked at Ethan. "Are you prepared to commit to this guardianship isn't temporary? It's legal responsibility for 5 children until they reach adulthood." "I understand. Do you? Because once we file these papers, there's no going back. These children become yours in the eyes of the law. Their welfare, their education, their futures. All of it rests on your shoulders." Emma watched Ethan's face, watched him look at Ruth's drawings spread across the table, at Sarah clutching Lily on the bed, at Toby silent and watchful near the stove. "I'm ready." "Then let's begin." The paperwork took hours. Garrett was meticulous, documenting everything: the circumstances of the children's parents' deaths, the conditions they'd been living in, Fletcher's attempts to claim them as debt collateral, the medical report from Dr. Whitmore. Emma answered questions until her voice went hoarse. Sarah provided details about their family history that Emma hadn't even known she remembered. Even Toby participated, nodding or shaking his head at yes or no questions, his silence accepted without comment. When it was done, when the last document was signed and witnessed, Garrett gathered everything into his case. "I'll file these first thing tomorrow. With luck, we'll have a preliminary hearing before Fletcher's petition goes through." He stood to leave, then paused. "One more thing. Fletcher's not going to like being outmaneuvered. Be careful. The man has a reputation for removing obstacles by any means necessary." "Let him try," Ethan said. "I'm serious, McAllister. He's had people run out of town before. People who crossed him and found themselves facing charges for crimes they didn't commit. The sheriff is in his pocket. So is half the town council." Garrett's expression was grim. "Watch your back. And watch those children." After he left, Emma found herself standing at the window, looking out at the snow-covered street. Silver Creek looked peaceful from up here. Quiet. Safe. It was none of those things. "You're worrying." She turned to find Ethan beside her. "You're not—" "Of course I am, but worrying doesn't change anything. Action does." He leaned against the window frame. "The lawyer's good. The paperwork's solid. We've got more cards to play than Fletcher expects. And if it's not enough, then we play dirty." His voice hardened. "Fletcher thinks he can push us around because we've got nothing to lose. But he's wrong. We've got everything to lose. And that makes us more dangerous than he knows." Emma studied his face, the set of his jaw, the determination in his eyes. "You've changed since we met." "Have I?" "When you found us in that alley, you looked like a man who'd given up on living. Now you look like someone with a reason to fight." "I found one." He didn't look at her. 5 reasons, actually." "We didn't ask you to save us." "I know. That's why it matters. He finally turned to meet her eyes. Emma, I spent 4 years convincing myself that caring about people was a weakness, that if I didn't let anyone in, I couldn't get hurt again. But you know what? Being alone hurt worse than losing them. At least when they were alive, I had something. After they died, after I ran, I had nothing. You had survival. Survival isn't living. It's just waiting to die slowly. His voice dropped. You and your siblings, you're not waiting. You're fighting. Every day, every hour, you're fighting to stay together, to stay alive, to stay hopeful. That's not survival. That's courage. I don't feel courageous. I feel terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. He put a hand on her shoulder. You've been acting despite fear for 19 days. Longer than that, probably. Since your mother died, since your father started working in that mine. You've been carrying fear and responsibility and grief, and you haven't broken yet. I've come close. Close isn't broken. Close is human. He squeezed her shoulder once, then let go. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start the real fight. But sleep didn't come easy that night. Emma lay in the darkness, listening to her siblings breathe, and thought about what the lawyer had said. What Ethan had said. What Fletcher was probably planning right now in his mahogany office above the assay building. She thought about her father, who had worked himself to death trying to provide for his family. About her mother, who had died bringing new life into the world. About all the promises they'd made that they couldn't keep. And she thought about Ethan, who had made promises too. Promises that felt different, stronger, like they were built on something more solid than hope. She was still thinking when she heard it. Footsteps outside the door. Quiet, careful footsteps that stopped just on the other side. Emma sat up slowly, her heart pounding. In the darkness, she could see Ethan already rising from his chair, his rifle in his hands, his body tense. Stay down, he breathed. Keep the children quiet. The footsteps moved away, then came back, then stopped again. Silence stretched. 1 minute, 2. Then slowly something slid under the door. A piece of paper. Ethan waited another full minute before moving to pick it up. He struck a match, held it close to the paper, and his face went hard as stone. What is it? Emma whispered. He handed her the note. The handwriting was elegant, precise. The words were not. 5 children in a burning boarding house. Such a tragedy. These things happen in winter when stoves overheat and people sleep too soundly. Consider this your only warning. A friend. Emma's hands were shaking. He's threatening to kill us. He's threatening to try. Ethan crushed the note in his fist. Wake your siblings, quietly. We're leaving. Leaving now. In the middle of the night. If Fletcher's willing to burn us out, he's willing to do worse. We need to be somewhere he can't find us. Ethan was already gathering their things. There's a ranch south of here, friend of mine from before. He'll take us in until the hearing. You have friends here. I have someone who owes me a debt. Same thing. He tossed her coat. Move. We don't have much time. Emma woke her siblings with gentle hands and urgent whispers. Sarah dressed Lily without questions. Ruth clutched her drawings to her chest. Toby stood ready before anyone asked him, to his small face serious. They were out the back door in minutes, following Ethan through snow-covered alleys, away from the main street, away from Silver Creek, and everything it threatened. Behind them, the boarding house sat silent and dark. And in a room above the assay building, Henry Fletcher smiled at the empty space where 5 children had been sleeping, never knowing they'd already slipped through his fingers. The ride south took 3 hours in the bitter cold. Emma held Lily against her chest, trying to shield the baby from wind that cut like broken glass. Sarah rode behind Ethan on his horse, her arms wrapped tight around his waist. Ruth and Toby shared a borrowed mare that Ethan had gotten from the livery stable owner, a man who owed him from some past favor he wouldn't explain. Nobody spoke. The silence felt necessary, like making noise would somehow alert Fletcher to their escape would bring his men thundering through the darkness after them. When the ranch finally appeared, Emma nearly wept with relief. It was small, nothing like the grand spread she'd heard about in stories. A cabin, a barn, corrals for horses, smoke rising from a chimney. But it was solid, real, safe. A man emerged from the cabin before they even dismounted, shotgun in his hands, suspicion in his stance. "Who's there?" "It's Ethan McAllister. I'm calling in that favor, Josiah." The shotgun lowered slowly. "McAllister, thought you'd be dead by now the way you were living." "Not dead, just found something worth living for." Ethan helped Sarah down from the horse. "I've got 5 children who need shelter. Fletcher's men are after us. I need a place to hide until the hearing." Josiah stepped closer, his weathered face unreadable in the moonlight. His eyes moved from child to child, counting, assessing. 5 of them. 5. All siblings. I'm filing for guardianship." "You?" Something like disbelief crossed Josiah's face. "Ethan McAllister, the man who swore he'd never settle down again. Taking on 5 children. Things change." "They must have." Josiah turned toward the cabin, gesturing for them to follow. "Get inside. Martha will want to fuss over them, and you look like you could use some coffee." Martha, Josiah's wife, was a round woman with kind eyes and hands that never stopped moving. She took one look at the children and immediately began heating water for baths, pulling out blankets, cutting bread and cheese. "You poor lambs, out in this cold at this hour. What were you thinking, Josiah, keeping them standing on the porch?" "I was thinking about whether I wanted to get involved in whatever trouble McAllister's brought to my door." "Well, you're involved now, so make yourself useful." She handed him the bread knife. "Slice. I'll get the little ones cleaned up." Ruth's eyes had gone wide. "She's nice." "She's terrifying is what she is." Josiah's voice was gruff, but Emma saw affection underneath. "Been married to her 30 years and I still don't win arguments." "That's because you're always wrong." Martha scooped up Lily, who had started to fuss. "Shh, sweet girl. You're safe now. Let's get you warm and fed." Emma watched her youngest sister settle into a stranger's arms without protest, and something twisted in her chest. Lily didn't remember their mother. Wouldn't remember this either, probably. All she knew was warmth and food and arms that held her gently. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all any child really needed. "Emma." Ethan's voice pulled her back. "Come sit. You need to eat too." She hadn't realized how tired she was until she sat down at the rough wooden table. Exhaustion hit her like a wave, making her limbs heavy and her thoughts slow. "How long can we stay here?" "As long as necessary." Josiah sat across from her, his shotgun now leaning against the wall. "I owe McAllister my life. He pulled me out of a river crossing gone wrong 5 years back. Could have kept riding, left me to drown, but he didn't. So you'll help us. I'll hide you. Keep you fed. But if Fletcher comes looking, I can't promise to fight him off." Josiah's expression was apologetic. "I've got my own family to think about. My wife, my sons who work the ranch. I won't risk them even for a debt." "Fair enough." Ethan sat down beside Emma. "I'm not asking you to fight my battles. Just need a place to wait until the lawyer can get our papers in front of the judge." "How long?" "Week, maybe 2. The territorial court moves slow." "A week I can do." Josiah glanced toward the back of the cabin where Martha had taken the younger children. "The little ones can share with our boys. They're used to crowded quarters. You and the older girl can have the barn loft. Not fancy, but it's warm enough with the horses below." "We've slept in worse places," Emma said. "I imagine you have." Josiah studied her with eyes that had seen too much. "How old are you, girl?" 12. 12. He shook his head slowly. "My oldest is 12. He still thinks the biggest problem in the world is whether he'll finish his chores in time to go fishing." His voice softened. "Life shouldn't have made you this hard this young." "Life didn't ask my permission." "No, it never does." The next few days settled into a rhythm that felt almost peaceful. The Josiah ranch wasn't large, but it was well run, and there was always work to be done. Emma helped Martha in the kitchen, learning recipes and techniques her mother had never had time to teach. Sarah assisted with the younger children, finding purpose in caring for Josiah's twin toddlers. Ruth discovered the horses. She spent hours in the barn, talking to them in that soft voice she usually reserved for Starlight. The animals responded to her in ways that amazed even Josiah, who had been working with horses his whole life. "She's got a gift," he said, watching Ruth brush down a skittish mare who wouldn't let anyone else near her. "Natural horseman. Some people are just born with the touch." "Pa was like that," Emma said. "Could gentle any horse no matter how wild. Ruth got it from him. She'll need training. Proper training, not just instinct, but the foundation's there." He turned to look at her. "What about you? What did you get from your father?" Emma thought about it. His stubbornness, Ma always said. His refusal to quit even when quitting would be easier. That's not a bad inheritance. Sometimes it feels like a curse. Toby surprised everyone. On the third day at the ranch, Josiah's oldest son William found him in the woodshed, carefully sorting scraps into piles by size and shape. When William asked what he was doing, Toby didn't answer in words. He picked up a handful of pieces and began arranging them into something that looked almost like a building. "He's making a cabin," William reported at dinner. "Out of wood scraps. It's actually pretty good." "Toby used to build things with Pa," Sarah said softly. "They'd spend hours making little toys from whatever they could find." That night, Emma found Toby in the corner of the loft, still working on his wooden creation. The cabin had walls now, a roof, even a tiny chimney made from bark. "That's beautiful," she said, sitting beside him. He looked up at her with those two old eyes, then back down at his work. "Is this for us, our future home?" A tiny nod. "It's perfect, Toby." Emma felt tears burn her eyes. "Pa would be so proud of you." He set down his work and leaned against her shoulder, his small body warm and solid. She wrapped an arm around him and held on, listening to his breathing, feeling his heartbeat against her side. He still wasn't speaking, but he was communicating. He was present. It was progress. Ethan rode into town twice that week, bringing back news that grew more troubling each time. "Fletcher knows we're gone," he reported after the first trip. "He's got men searching the roads, asking questions at every ranch within 20 miles. Have they come here?" "Not yet. Josiah's place is off the main routes, and Fletcher doesn't know about my connection to him." Ethan's jaw tightened. "But it's only a matter of time. We need to speed up the hearing." The second trip brought worse news. Judge Hawkins denied our petition for expedited guardianship, said there wasn't enough evidence of immediate danger to the children. Ethan slammed his fist against the barn wall. "Fletcher got to him. I know he did." "So what now?" "Garrett's filing an appeal with the territorial court in Cheyenne, but it means more waiting, more hiding." "We can't hide forever." "We won't have to. Fletcher's making mistakes, Emma. He's pushing too hard too fast. People are starting to notice. Dr. Whitmore filed a formal complaint about the apprenticeship papers. Martha Caldwell from the restaurant testified that she witnessed Fletcher threaten you. Even Reverend Brennan is speaking out." "Reverend Brennan?" Emma was surprised. "He wanted to put us on the orphan train." "He wanted you safe. Now he sees that Fletcher's idea of safe is very different from his own." Ethan sat down on a hay bale. "The town is dividing, Emma. Some people are siding with Fletcher because they're scared of him, but others are starting to ask questions, starting to wonder if a man who threatens to burn children alive is really the kind of person they want running their community." The note. Someone told them about the note. Garrett made sure of it, copied it, and distributed it to every business owner in Silver Creek. A grim smile crossed Ethan's face. "Fletcher's reputation is cracking. He's not invincible anymore." That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay in the hayloft, listening to Sarah's soft breathing beside her, staring up at the darkness, thinking about everything that had happened, and everything that still could. 23 days ago, she had been a girl with a father and a home and a future she could imagine. Now she was something else entirely. Something harder, maybe, but also something more. A fighter, a protector, a person who had learned that survival required more than just staying alive. "You're awake." Ethan's voice came from the ladder. She hadn't heard him climb up. "Can't sleep." "Me neither." He settled onto the hay a few feet away, close enough to talk, but not crowding her space. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything. Nothing." She turned her head to look at him. "Do you really think we're going to win?" "Honestly, I don't know. Fletcher has money power connections. We have a lawyer and some witnesses and a lot of hope." He was quiet for a moment. "But I've seen underdogs win before. Seen people with nothing beat people with everything just because they wanted it more." "Is that what we are, underdogs?" "We're survivors. That's better." He propped himself up on one elbow. "Emma, whatever happens at the hearing, whatever the judge decides, I want you to know something." "What?" "I'm not giving up, even if we lose the first round, the second round, the 10th round. I'll keep fighting until there's nothing left to fight with." His voice was fierce in the darkness. "Those children in there, your siblings, they're mine now. In my heart, if not on paper. And I don't abandon what's mine." "You barely know us." "I know enough." He lay back down. "I know Ruth talks to invisible horses because real people have let her down too many times. I know Sarah carries guilt. She shouldn't have to carry guilt for being alive when your parents aren't. I know Toby's voice is locked inside him somewhere, waiting for the world to feel safe enough to come out. And me. What do you know about me? I know you'd die for them, kill for them, sacrifice everything you are and everything you could be just to keep them safe." His voice softened. "I know you're exhausted and scared and angry, and you've been all those things for so long, you've forgotten what it feels like to be anything else." Emma felt her throat tighten. "That's more than most people see." "Most people don't look. I do." "Why?" "Because I recognize it. Because 4 years ago I was where you are now, exhausted, scared, angry, carrying weight I couldn't put down." He was quiet for a moment. "I didn't handle it well. Ran away instead of facing it. Lost myself in the running until I forgot who I'd been before." "But you stopped." "I stopped because of you. Because of all of you." She heard him swallow. "The day I found you in that alley, I was on my way to nowhere. Had been riding for weeks, no destination, no purpose. Just moving, because standing still hurt too much. What changed? You looked at me, really looked at me, not through me like most people do, and I saw myself in your eyes, saw a man who could still matter to someone if he chose to try." His voice cracked slightly. "I'd forgotten that was possible. You reminded me." Emma didn't know what to say, so she reached out across the hay and found his hand rough and calloused and warm. He squeezed back. They lay there in silence, hand in hand, until Emma finally fell asleep. The riders came on the 7th day, 6 of them hard-looking men on hard-ridden horses approaching the ranch from the north road. Emma saw them first from her lookout position in the barn loft and felt her blood turn to ice. "Ethan!" He was beside her in seconds, rifle already in his hands. His face went tight as he counted the approaching men. "Get the children. Take them out the back, through the creek bed and into the woods. Don't stop until you reach the old mining camp about 3 miles south. I'll find you. I'm not leaving you. Emma, this isn't negotiable." He grabbed her shoulders, his grip fierce. "If something happens to me, you run. You take your siblings and you run, and you don't look back. Promise me." "I can't." "Promise me." She looked into his eyes, saw fear and determination, and something that might have been love. "I promise." "Good." He released her. "Now go. Move fast and stay quiet." Emma flew down the ladder, found her siblings already gathered in the main cabin with Martha and her children. Sarah had Lily in her arms. Ruth was clutching Toby's hand. We have to go. Now. No one questioned her. They moved through the back door across the yard, down the slope toward the creek. Emma heard shouting behind them, heard Josiah's voice challenging the riders, heard Ethan backing him up. Then she heard gunfire. Ruth screamed, and Emma clamped a hand over her mouth. Quiet! We have to be quiet! They ran. The creek bed was shallow, frozen in places, mud sucking at their shoes in others. Lily started crying, and Sarah pressed her face against her shoulder to muffle the sound. Toby stumbled twice, and Emma hauled him up each time, refusing to let go of his hand. Behind them, the gunfire continued, then stopped. Emma froze, listening. Nothing. No more shots, no more shouting. Just winter silence and the pounding of her own heart. Emma? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. What do we do? Keep moving. We get to the mining camp like Ethan said. But what if... He'll find us. Emma made herself believe it. He promised. They reached the old mining camp as the sun was starting to set. Abandoned buildings, rotting equipment, the bones of an enterprise that had failed decades ago. But there was shelter here, walls to block the wind, darkness to hide in. Emma found a small shed that looked more intact than the others, and ushered her siblings inside. They huddled together on the dirt floor, 5 bodies sharing warmth, sharing fear. I'm scared. Ruth's voice was very small. I know, sweetheart. I'm scared too. Is Ethan going to die? No. Emma said it with more certainty than she felt. He's too stubborn to die. Hours passed. The sun set completely, leaving them in darkness, broken only by moonlight through the gaps in the walls. Lily fell asleep in Sarah's arms. Toby sat rigid against Emma's side, his eyes fixed on the door. When the door finally opened, Emma's heart stopped. Then Ethan stepped through and she could breathe again. He was bloodied. His coat was torn and there was a gash on his forehead that was still seeping red. But he was alive. He was standing. You're okay. The words came out broken. Winged, a couple of them. Josiah got one in the leg. They retreated. He crossed to them, dropping to his knees in front of Emma. Are you all hurt? The children. We're fine. Scared but fine. She reached up and touched the wound on his head. You need a doctor. I need to get you somewhere safer than this. He winced as her fingers brushed the gash. The riders were Fletcher's men. He knows where we were hiding. Josiah's sending his family to his brother's place, and we need to do the same. Go where we've run out of places to hide. Not yet. Ethan's eyes met hers. There's one place Fletcher won't expect. One place nobody will think to look. Where? Silver Creek. The very center of it. A grim smile crossed his face. The church. Reverend Brennan offered sanctuary. Fletcher's men won't violate church grounds, not even for him. That's insane. It's our only option. He stood swaying slightly. Can you walk? We can walk, but you. I've had worse. He held out his hand. Come on. We've got a long night ahead of us. Emma took his hand and stood. Then she turned to her siblings, saw their pale faces in the moonlight, their trust in her, despite everything. We're going back, she said. We're going to finish this. Ruth's chin lifted. Together. Together. They walked out of the mining camp into the cold night, 6 people against the world heading back toward the town that had tried to destroy them. Heading toward the fight they couldn't afford to lose. Reverend Brennan met them at the church door with a lantern in one hand and a Bible in the other. Inside, quickly. They filed past him into the darkness of the small sanctuary, exhausted bodies collapsing onto wooden pews that creaked under their weight. Emma guided her siblings toward the front, where the moonlight through stained glass cast colored shadows on the floor. Fletcher's men came by an hour ago. The Reverend's voice was low, urgent. Asked if I'd seen you. I told them no. You lied for us. I protected children. There's a difference. He set down his lantern. The storage room in back has blankets and a stove. Not comfortable but safe. Fletcher won't violate sanctuary. You're sure about that? I'm not sure about anything anymore, but I'm willing to bet my church on it. Brennan looked at Ethan's bloodied face and winced. You need tending. Later. Right now I need to know what's happening with the hearing. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Judge Hawkins will hear both petitions, yours and Fletcher's. The Reverend paused. The whole town knows about it. People are choosing sides. Which side has more? Hard to say. Fletcher's got money and fear working for him. You've got something else. What? Righteousness. Brennan almost smiled. Amazing how powerful that can be when people remember what it means. They slept in the storage room that night, all 6 of them crowded together on thin mattresses that smelled of dust and old hymnals. Emma woke several times, listening for footsteps, for threats, for the sound of Fletcher's men breaking down the door. Nothing came. Morning arrived gray and cold, and with it, Martha Caldwell carrying baskets of food and clean clothes. You think I'd let you face that courtroom looking like refugees? She began sorting through her bundles. Wash up, eat, look like people who deserve to win. Martha, Emma's voice caught. Why are you helping us? Fletcher could ruin you. Fletcher already tried. Sent men to my restaurant last night, told me to close my doors or face consequences. Martha's jaw set. I told them where they could put their consequences. Been running that restaurant for 20 years. Nobody tells me when to close. You could lose everything. I could, but some things matter more than everything. She handed Emma a dress, simple but clean. Your mother used to come to my restaurant before she got sick. Always had a kind word, always left a bigger tip than she could afford. Said she wanted her daughters to grow up knowing that generosity matters even when it costs you. I remember. Good. Then honor her by winning today. Martha turned to the younger children. Come on, lambs. Let's get you presentable. The walk to the courthouse felt like walking to war. Ethan led them through streets lined with people who watched in silence. Some faces held hostility. Others held hope. Most held the careful blankness of folks who hadn't decided yet which way the wind would blow. Emma held Lily against her hip, Ruth's hand in her free hand, Sarah walking beside her with Toby between them. A small army of children marching toward their fate. The courthouse was packed. Every seat was filled, and more people stood along the walls, crowding the doorways, spilling out onto the steps. Emma saw Martha near the front, Dr. Whitmore beside her. She saw Widow Mercer in Fletcher's camp, her thin face pinched with disapproval. She saw miners who had worked alongside her father, shopkeepers, who had watched her beg ordinary people who had looked away for 23 days. Now they were looking. Judge Hawkins sat behind his bench, his expression giving nothing away. Fletcher sat at one table with his lawyer immaculate in a suit that cost more than Emma's father had earned in a year. Ethan and Garrett took the other table, positioning the children on a bench directly behind them. This court is now in session. Hawkins's voice cut through the murmuring crowd. We're here to determine the proper guardianship of the minor children, Emma Grace, Sarah Jane, Ruth Ann, Tobias James, and Lily Rose Thornton. Mr. Fletcher, you may present your petition first. Fletcher's lawyer was a smooth man with a smoother voice. He laid out the case with practiced ease, the debt owed to the mining company, the legal right to claim assets in satisfaction, the generous offer of apprenticeship that would give the children structure and purpose. My client is prepared to provide for these children, the lawyer concluded, to give them training room board and a future. All he asks in return is fair compensation for the debt their father left behind. And the separation. Garrett's voice rose from the other table. Your client's plan would place these children in 5 different households. Is he also prepared to explain why siblings should be torn apart like property to be divided? The circumstances require practical solutions. Not every family can take 5 children. But one man can. One man is willing. Garrett stood gesturing toward Ethan. Mr. Ethan McAllister has filed for full guardianship of all 5 Thornton children. He has the means to support them, the willingness to keep them together, and the character to raise them right. Character. Fletcher himself spoke, now his voice dripping contempt. This man is a drifter, a vagrant with no permanent address, no family of his own, no roots in this community. He appeared 3 weeks ago from nowhere, and expects us to trust him with 5 vulnerable children. He appeared at exactly the right moment. Garrett's voice hardened. When those children had been on the streets for 19 days. When the good citizens of Silver Creek walked past them without stopping. When your client was already planning how to use their labor for his profit. That's slander. That's truth. And I have witnesses to prove it. The testimony began. Martha Caldwell described finding the children huddled behind her restaurant too weak to stand. Dr. Whitmore presented his medical report detailing the signs of malnutrition and exposure he'd found when he examined them. Mrs. Patterson surprisingly testified that Ethan had paid her mortgage in full rather than see the children turned out. He didn't have to do that, she said, her voice uncertain. Could have just taken them somewhere else, but he paid what I owed so Fletcher couldn't hold it over my head anymore. And why would he do that, Mrs. Patterson? Because he's not like Fletcher. He actually cares about people, not just what he can get from them. Fletcher's face had gone red. Emma watched him lean over to whisper furiously to his lawyer, watched the lawyer shake his head in response. Then Garrett called his final witness. Emma Grace Thornton, please approach. Emma's legs felt like they belonged to someone else as she walked to the witness chair. The room was silent, every eye on her waiting. Miss Thornton, can you tell the court what happened on the morning Mr. McAllister found you? We were in the alley behind Brennan's General Store. We'd been there for 19 days, sleeping in the stockroom when it got too cold, begging for food when we could. Toby had stopped talking. Lily's lips were turning blue. Emma's voice was steady, but her hands shook. And then Mr. McAllister stopped. What did he do? He looked at us, really looked, and he asked if we were okay. Her throat tightened. Nobody had asked us that in 19 days. People saw us, but they didn't see us. He did. And what happened next? He bought us food, gave Toby his coat, found us a warm place to stay. Emma looked directly at Fletcher. He didn't ask for anything in return. Didn't talk about debts or labor or separating us. He just helped. Why do you think he did that? Because he lost his own family. His wife and daughter died, and he spent 4 years running from the pain. Emma turned to look at Ethan, saw his eyes bright with unshed tears. He said we reminded him of everything he'd lost, and everything he could still have if he was brave enough to reach for it. Is he a good guardian? He's the best person I've ever known. He's patient with Ruth when she talks to invisible horses. He's gentle with Toby, even though Toby can't talk back. He's teaching Sarah that it's okay to be a child instead of a mother. He holds Lily like she's made of gold. Emma's voice broke. He's everything my father would have wanted for us. The courtroom was silent. One more question, Miss Thornton. Garrett's voice was soft. What do you want? If this court gave you the choice, what would you choose? Emma looked at the judge, at Fletcher, at the hundreds of faces watching her waiting. I want my family to stay together. I want to stop being afraid. I want to wake up in the morning knowing that someone will be there, that someone cares, that someone chose us. Her voice rose. I want Ethan McAllister to be my father, and I want Henry Fletcher to leave us alone. Silence stretched. Then from somewhere in the back of the courtroom, someone started clapping. One person at first, then another, then more, until the sound swelled into something that shook the walls and brought tears to Emma's eyes. She saw Martha wiping her face, saw Dr. Whitmore nodding, saw miners standing up, shopkeepers standing up, ordinary people standing up and applauding. Judge Hawkins banged his gavel. Order, I will have order in this court. The clapping died slowly, reluctantly. Emma returned to her seat on trembling legs, felt Ethan's hand grip her shoulder as she passed. "Well done," he whispered. "I'm so proud of you." Fletcher was on his feet now, his face twisted with fury. "This is absurd. You can't let sentimentality override the law. Those children are legally—" "Mr. Fletcher," Judge Hawkins's voice cut through like a knife. "I've heard enough from you. Now I'll hear from the law." He pulled out a stack of documents, studied them for a long moment. The courtroom held its breath. "The debt you claim is based on a company script system that has been ruled exploitative by territorial courts in 3 separate cases. The back rent you're demanding was for housing that you repossessed before any missed payment occurred. And the apprenticeship papers you're proposing would separate siblings in direct violation of the Territorial Child Welfare Act of 1876. Fletcher's face went white. "Your Honor, I'm not finished." Hawkins' eyes were cold. "Furthermore, I have received testimony from multiple witnesses that you threatened to burn down a boarding house with children inside, that you sent armed men to intimidate anyone who helped the Thornton family, that you have systematically used your wealth and influence to obstruct justice and terrorize this community." "That's lies, all lies." "Then explain this." Hawkins held up a piece of paper. "This note was found under the door of Mrs. Patterson's boarding house 3 nights ago. It threatens to burn 5 children alive. The handwriting has been matched to correspondence from your office." The courtroom erupted. Emma saw Fletcher's lawyer stand up, then sit down, then stand up again. Saw Fletcher himself back away from the table, his face a mask of disbelief. Saw Sheriff Dawson moving through the crowd toward the front, his hand on his gun. "Henry Fletcher." Judge Hawkins's voice rang out over the chaos. "I am ordering your immediate arrest on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, extortion, and obstruction of justice. Sheriff Dawson, take him into custody." "You can't do this." Fletcher's voice was a scream now. "I own this town. I own all of you. You own nothing that matters." Ethan stood up, his eyes fixed on Fletcher. "You had money and power and fear, and you thought that was enough. But it wasn't, because these children had something you couldn't buy. And what's that? Each other." Ethan's voice was steady. "Family. People who would fight for them, even when it cost everything. That's worth more than all your money combined." Dawson reached Fletcher, handcuffs in hand. For a moment, Emma thought the mine owner would fight, would rage, would burn the whole courthouse down with the force of his fury. Instead, he seemed to crumble. His shoulders sagged. His face went slack. He let Dawson put the cuffs on without resistance, let himself be led away through a crowd that parted in silence. The last Emma saw of Henry Fletcher, he was looking back at her with eyes that held nothing but empty defeat. Judge Hawkins waited until the doors closed behind them, then turned back to the courtroom. "Now, to the matter of guardianship." He looked at Ethan. "Mr. McAllister, do you understand the responsibility you're asking to take on?" "Yes, Your Honor." 5 children, 5 lives. Everything from scraped knees to broken hearts, from first steps to last goodbyes. You're prepared for that. I've spent 4 years running from responsibility, running from love, running from everything that mattered. Ethan's voice was raw. "I'm done running. These children are my family now. I'll spend the rest of my life proving I deserve that gift." Hawkins studied him for a long moment. Then his face softened into something that might have been a smile. "In all my years on this bench, I've seen a lot of people claim to want children. Most of them wanted free labor or status or someone to carry on their name." He picked up his gavel. "This is the first time I've seen a man want children simply because he loves them." He brought the gavel down. "Guardianship of Emma Grace, Sarah Jane, Ruth Ann Tobias James, and Lily Rose Thornton is hereby granted to Ethan Cole McAllister. This court is adjourned." The sound that went up from the crowd was like nothing Emma had ever heard. Cheering, crying, stamping feet, and clapping hands. She felt herself swept up by Sarah, by Ruth, by Ethan, who gathered all four of them into his arms and held on like he would never let go. "We did it," Sarah was sobbing. "We actually did it." "We're staying together," Ruth said, her face buried against Ethan's chest. "We're really staying together." And then, so quietly, Emma almost missed it, another voice spoke. "Papa?" Everything stopped. Emma turned to see Toby standing slightly apart, his lips moving, his eyes fixed on Ethan. "Papa?" Louder this time. "Can I call you Papa?" Ethan released the girls and dropped to his knees in front of the boy. His face was wet with tears, his hands shaking as he reached out to touch Toby's cheek. "Yes." The word came out broken. "Yes, Toby. You can call me Papa." Toby launched himself forward, wrapping his small arms around Ethan's neck, and the sound that came from his throat wasn't quite a word. It was relief and grief and hope all tangled together, spilling out after months of silence. "Papa," he said again. "My papa." Emma watched Ethan hold her brother, watched her sisters gather around them, watched 5 children and 1 man become something new. A family. Not by blood or law, but by choice. By love. By the simple act of someone stopping when everyone else kept walking. Later that day, they stood outside the church where everything had begun. The sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of gold and rose. Martha had gone home to prepare a celebration dinner. Dr. Whitmore had promised to check on them tomorrow. Even Mrs. Patterson had offered congratulations, her thin face softening into something almost like warmth. "What happens now?" Sarah asked. "Now we find a home." Ethan looked at each of them in turn. "A real home, with walls, and a roof, and a door that locks. Somewhere you can grow up safe." "Can it have a garden?" Ruth asked. "I want to plant flowers." "It can have whatever you want." "Can I have my own room?" Sarah's voice was hesitant. "I've never had my own room before." "You can have your own room. So can Ruth. So can Toby." "What about Emma?" Lily asked, her small voice piping up from where she was perched on Ethan's hip. "Does Emmy get a room?" "Emmy gets the biggest room," Ethan said, looking at Emma. "Because Emmy carried all of you when nobody else would. Emmy held this family together through the worst days imaginable. Emmy deserves everything good this world has to offer." Emma felt tears spill down her cheeks. "You give me too much credit." "I don't give you enough." Ethan shifted Lily to one arm and pulled Emma close with the other. "You are the bravest person I've ever met, Emma Grace Thornton, and I'm honored to be your father." They walked back through town together, 5 children, and the man who had chosen them. People waved as they passed. Some called out congratulations. Others just watched, their faces thoughtful, as if seeing something they'd missed before. At Martha's restaurant, the celebration was already underway. Food covered every surface, and people kept arriving with more. It seemed like half of Silver Creek had come to welcome the new family. Emma sat in a corner watching her siblings eat and laugh and be children for the first time in months. Ruth was telling Martha about Starlight, and Martha was listening seriously, asking questions about invisible horses, as if they were the most natural thing in the world. Sarah was helping Lily eat without making too much mess. Toby sat close to Ethan, not talking much, but present, connected, part of something larger than himself. "Thank you." Emma looked up to find Ethan settling into the chair beside her. "For what?" "For trusting me. For giving me a chance to be something other than a ghost walking through the world." He took her hand. "For reminding me what it means to be alive. You saved us." "We saved each other." He squeezed her fingers. "That's what family does." Emma looked around the room at all these people who had finally chosen to see, to help, to care. At her siblings, safe and fed and loved. At the man who had walked into her life 23 days ago and changed everything. She thought about her father buried in a collapsed mine. About her mother taken by childbirth. about all the loss and grief and fear that had brought her to this moment. And she realized that somewhere along the way, without her even noticing the weight she'd been carrying, had shifted, not disappeared. She would always carry the memory of her parents, the scar of those 19 days on the street, the knowledge of how quickly everything could be taken away. But she wasn't carrying it alone anymore. "Papa," she said the word carefully, testing it on her tongue. "Can I call you that too?" Ethan's breath caught, his eyes filled. "I would be honored." "Then that's what you are." Emma leaned against his shoulder, feeling his warmth, his solidity, his promise. "That's what you've been since the moment you stopped." Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and white and clean. The world was still cold, still hard, still full of people like Fletcher, who saw children as assets and families as commodities. But inside Martha's restaurant, surrounded by warmth and food and laughter and love, 5 children and their father celebrated the beginning of everything new. They had survived the darkest winter of their lives. Now spring was coming, and the Thornton McAllister family would be ready for whatever it brought. Emma looked at her sisters, her brother, her father. She thought about the cabin they would build, the garden Ruth would plant, the horses they would raise. She thought about school and friends and futures that stretched out bright and possible. She thought about 23 days ago when she had sat on frozen steps waiting for someone to see her. Someone had. And that had made all the difference. Ruth's voice cut through her thoughts, high and happy. "Emma, Emma, come see what Martha made. It's a cake, a real cake, and she says we can have as much as we want." Emma smiled, wiped her eyes, and stood up. "Coming," she called. She walked toward her family, toward the light and warmth and love waiting for her. She had finally stopped waiting, and she had finally found her home.